It's been a common complaint to criticize the San Francisco Giants 2022-2023 offseason, in which they didn't end up with that superstar so many were expecting, and then a lot of their signings that they made, Conforto, etc., haven't really panned out this year. And in fact, even today, we're going to get into that topic. But one move that kind of has flown under the radar doesn't technically count as an offseason signing, but it was an extension. Wilmer Flores, and my goodness, is that extension looking pretty darn good right about now. Where would this team be without him?
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about these Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there. Please hit that subscribe button as well, wherever it is that you're listening to or watching Locked On Giants. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or enter promo code LockedOnMLB for a free white tech hat with any order. You won't want to take your bird dogs off, we promise you. Or this hat. I'm holding it on camera if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube. If you're watching, you can see that. But anyway, coming up on today's show, I don't want to spend too much time talking about yesterday's game, not because I want to avoid it, but there isn't much to say. The Giants lost a game. Now they've got to face Ohtani to try to win this series. And if they don't win tonight, then they'll have had a 1-4 road trip. So big game to kind of not have a really difficult road trip facing, the A's and the Angels. You shouldn't go 1-4 against those teams, but Ohtani's tough. So yeah, they lost last night, but Flores continued to be just a monster. He's just carried this team for the last 6+ weeks, and he did it again yesterday. He homered off of old friend Dominic Leone, and he's played so well that he's just kind of cemented himself as someone who has to be in the lineup. And for a while, Gabe Kapler wasn't playing him every day, but at this point, he's kind of playing him every day, and it's pushed Peterson into the outfield, which I think is the right move to make. I personally would not take Wilmer Flores out of the lineup right now. It seems pretty much a no-brainer. The dude is just having an unbelievable season, hitting .310, .367 on base, .552 slugging, a 147 weighted runs created plus, meaning 47% better than the league average, 241 isolated power. There's just nothing really that he's not doing well at the plate. He's one of the few Giants whose strikeout rate is well below average, and by below average, I mean better than average. Strikeout rate's only 15.6% for Flores, and the team strikeout rate is around 25%, about 10 points higher than Flores' strikeout rate. And so if you take Flores out, it actually would go up even a little bit more. He's got 15 home runs. His career high came last year when he hit 19, but he's possibly going to surpass that and hit 20 for the first time. So my main point, and I tweeted this out before the game yesterday, so it's not again, I don't want to come across like I'm avoiding the negativity of a loss, but yeah, so I tweeted this before the game, so it was obviously on my mind, which is that we tend to look at the offseason and say these moves were disappointing or they haven't panned out so far. There's, I have said repeatedly that I still believe in pretty much all of these guys who they signed in the offseason, and we will get into all those moves and how they're performing later on today. But a move that doesn't technically count as the offseason, to me, does kind of count as an offseason move. And I'm not cherry picking. It really does feel like it was kind of an offseason move in that Wilmer Flores was set to reach free agency after last year. He was playing out the last year of his contract. And in September of 2022, the Giants and Flores agreed to an extension, and it was a 3-year, $16.5 million extension. And Flores, I mean, I'm not sitting here to tell you, oh, it's all about like signing a player to a cheap contract or a below market contract. I'm just objectively stating that contract looks really nice right now. And, according to like, you can calculate how much a player, what is their like wins above replacement. And we know like what does a win above replacement cost in the open market. And for Flores, he's already basically produced more than the value of the total contract, which spans 3 years in this season, which isn't even over yet. And so it's looking like a very team-friendly deal. This is kind of an outlier season for Flores. He's always been solid, but right now he's playing out of his mind a little bit. And so anyway, it's not a strict 3-year deal, but it's $6.5 million this year, bargain. He's already, like I said, more, basically tripled that value for the $6.5 million in 2023, $6.5 million for 2024, and then there's a $3.5 million player option for 2025. And you might think, well, he's gonna not opt in if he plays like this and he'll leave, but it's kind of an unusual structure here where if he doesn't opt in, it becomes an $8.5 million team option for 2025. So the Giants could keep him if they want to for 2 more years after this year. And next year, he's for sure back. And so I just think that move kind of goes under the radar. We almost like take for granted that he's on the Giants a little bit. But he's been one of the better kind of moves that this front office has made. And they signed him going into 2020 when he was 28 years old. And here he is now, age 32. He just turned 32 3 days ago. And he's going to be here ultimately. Next year will be his 5th season as a Giant, and he very well could be here for a 6th season, and who knows after that. And so, I mean, talking about jerseys and growing attached to players and all that stuff, I think Flores has become a guy like, no, he's not a star player. He is kind of hitting at a star level right now, but I wouldn't expect him to keep up this level of production. But I mean, he's just been a huge part of this season and carrying them through this prolonged offensive slump that they've had as a team. He has been immune to it somehow. Like, they need to use his bats or something. Like, he's just been the only guy consistently, and he's just been so consistent through this 6-week period. Like, he has not cooled off. Eventually he probably will cool off, but I just think that move never really gets talked about as a move from the offseason, and technically it was not. It occurred in the 2022 season, but imagine if he had reached free agency and entered the open market and there had been competition for him and he signed elsewhere. He's just a big part of this team, so credit where credit is due for the Giants getting this extension done, and it's paying huge dividends. And he's happy here. I don't want to like celebrate a player being underpaid. That's not my point at all. I would say the same exact stuff I'm saying today if he was paid more, but it's a lot of money. He's made a lot of money in his career, and he's happy here, and he's just a huge part of this team. So all the credit in the world to Wilmer Flores. And also, by the way, he's a good defensive first baseman. He's not good like anywhere else, in my opinion. Third, second, it just doesn't work well. He could do it in an emergency, but he's really solid at first base, and he can DH, and he's just lefties or righties, he can hit them both. So anyway, just wanted to give total credit to Flores for what he's doing and also for the team for this extension. So coming up in just a minute, though, the flip side of it. What about the other offseason moves? A lot of moves. They signed like 6 players, and for the most part, almost all of them have struggled. And the face of it for me is Michael Conforto. We'll get into Conforto and everybody else momentarily, and before we do, I want you to know that this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs, the most comfortable and good-looking shorts that I have ever worn. And I knew it immediately when I got my first set of Bird Dogs in the mail. I put them on without being in front of a mirror, and my immediate reaction was, oh my gosh, these are the most comfortable shorts I've ever worn. And oftentimes you don't get comfort and style, right? You have to kind of pick one, and maybe your comfortable clothes are clothes you can't wear out of the house, right? Or if the clothes you do wear out of the house aren't comfortable. But these were so comfortable. And then I walked out into the living room where my girlfriend was sitting, and she looked at them and said, "Those are the best looking shorts you've ever worn." She literally said that. She said it immediately. And so I just was hooked. And from then on, it's bird dogs or nothing for me. So if you go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb or enter promo code lockedonmlb, you will get this free white tech hat with your order. This is a great looking hat. I love the way this hat looks. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb or promo code lockedonmlb for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. All right, as promised, we're going to get into the offseason moves a little bit because to me, front and center right now for the Giants struggles as an offense is Michael Conforto, because this guy was supposed to be a big-time run producer, but it just hasn't happened. And then think about Mitch Haniger. He was also supposed to be, for a different reason. It hasn't happened with him because he's not been on the field. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow, we're going to be breaking down the Giants facing Shohei Ohtani on the mound. Man, we've seen what he can do at the plate, but guess what? He also can take over a game on the mound. Dude is unbelievable, and it's gonna be fun, so I can't wait to get into it tomorrow. The Giants play the Angels tonight, again at 6:38 Pacific, and you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. Giants going with Ryan Walker as an opener. Didn't work out yesterday with the opener, but kind of a fluke result. 4 runs in the first inning. Very unusual. I wouldn't expect that again, hopefully. So I want to get into the offseason, and I don't want to be overly critical of any individual players because this game is really hard, and I do want to preface this by pointing out that a lot of the big-time free agents from last offseason, including Carlos Correa, including Trey Turner, Carlos Rodon, have struggled mightily and or been injured. And, Jacob deGrom, Tommy John surgery, Aaron Judge, toe ligament torn or whatever. He's been hurt. And so just so many of the top guys and more, and including, Conforto, although he wasn't really considered a top guy, but it's been a rough go for a lot of the free agent signings from last year, including guys on multi-$100 million contracts. And so to point out Conforto and be like, he's struggling, the front office made a bad pick with him, is kind of, you need to realize in the greater context that a lot of the guys have struggled. So if they had ended up with Carlos Correa or Trey Turner or Carlos Rodon, and they had the years that they're having, we'd be having the same conversation, except we'd be talking about a $300 million contract as well as the struggles, which is more stressful as a fan, I think, when your $300 million player is really struggling. So with that out of the way, I said before the season that Michael Conforto or Mitch Haniger had to have a big year for the Giants to make the playoffs, is what I said. And right now, the Giants are tied with the Phillies as the top wildcard team, 10 games over 500, and neither Michael Conforto nor Mitch Haniger has been that guy that I said that they needed to be. Michael Conforto now on the season, it's easy to pick on him as opposed to Haniger because he's actually playing, but it's obviously worse to not even be playing, I think. But for Conforto, he's hit .235, which is disappointingly low, .327 on base, which is pretty average, .383 slugging. This is where I kind of go, what's going on here? The isolated power is just 148, which would be a career low. His career isolated power, including this season, is 206, and it's right now at 148. So that's a big drop-off in the power department. This is a guy who hit 27, 28, 33 homers in consecutive years, 17, 18, and 19. 2020, short season, hit 9 homers in just 54 games. And then in 2021, he did have a down offensive year, And then in 2022, he missed the whole season with the shoulder injury. So unfortunately, he's playing more like that down 2021 year, his last year in New York. And also defensively, I have not loved what I've seen. It doesn't look like he's moving all that well. And the kind of metrics have him -4 outs above average, -2 defensive runs saved, kind of lines up with what I've seen. So when you're not playing great defense and you're not hitting all that well, it's not a great combination. And Conforto has this $18 million player option for next season. And right now, to me, it looks like if the season ended today, he would probably opt into that. I mean, I would imagine that he would opt into that. And so they're kind of, I don't like to put it this way. He seems like a really good guy and a great teammate, but in a sense, they'd kind of be stuck with him for next year. But that's the case with any contract if it's guaranteed. The opt-out doesn't really change that. So if you had just given him a 2-year deal, you'd be stuck with him anyway. And so again, I don't like to say stuck with him, and the track record is much better than this. And he's also streaky, and so he could really have a great August and September, get really hot, and it could change the whole equation. But so far, I mean, he came up in some big spots last night, didn't come through, and just on the whole for the season, it just hasn't gone according to hopes and even expectations. Below average offensively, only half a win above replacement, which is, I mean, I just talked about the value of Flores. So far, according to Fangraphs, the value produced by Conforto is about $4 million, and they're paying him $18 per year. And so that just goes to show you that he hasn't performed as they hoped. And the same is true with Mitch Haniger, but he's also been injured. I mean, Haniger didn't hit when he was healthy, and he has been injured. He had just a 78 weighted runs created plus. We're talking about just 40 games that Haniger played, hitting 230, 281 on base, 372 slugging. But I truly believe he could come back and get hot and make an impact down the stretch. I haven't given up on either of these guys, but it's a 3-year, $43.5 million deal for Haniger. It's got this weird structure, and there's an opt-out after the second year, and the salaries kind of go from low to high to middle. So it's a strange structure, but Haniger's essentially been a non-factor in year one. Freak injury with the hit by pitch. You can't say, oh, he's injury prone. He got hit in the arm by a pitch that like fractured the bone. So, but when all is said and done, he hasn't been that guy. It's amazing that they're 10 games over 500 with pretty much all of their offseason moves not contributing as they had hoped. Ross Stripling, same kind of thing. Although he's pitched better since coming off the injured list, much better. And he's kind of been in that starting rotation. We'll see next time he gets a start. But overall, he's got a 5.21 ERA, allowing 2 home runs per 9 innings, which is way too high. Jock Peterson has had a somewhat disappointing season. The expected numbers are much better than the actual numbers, but he's a platoon DH for the most part, and he just hasn't made as much of an impact as he did last year or as much as they had hoped he would this year. And I would say generally Taylor Rogers, after a rough start, has been good, and Luke Jackson has had a rough recent couple games, but before that was good, and overall has been good. Has a 2.45 ERA with the Giants this year, and so, but only 14 2/3 innings pitched. They haven't really used Taylor Rogers or Jackson as much as I hoped or thought that they would. It could be they're just taking care of them. Jackson's coming off Tommy John surgery, but yeah, that's Sean Manaea as well, although I've been intrigued by what he's done out of the bullpen. I've talked about this many times, but the kind of underlying numbers are really strong from Manaea. Striking out batters, not giving up a lot of walks, keeping the ball in the ballpark. So I'm intrigued by Manaea, and a lot of these guys have the potential to still make an impact down the stretch. But overall, it's just been disappointing pretty much across the board. So coming up in just a minute, there's an update from yesterday with AJ Pollock starting the game, but having to come out with a side issue. And there are reports that Marco Luciano may be coming back to the major leagues. What is that going to look like? What is his fit now? And what about Wade Meckler? When is this guy coming to the majors? To me, could be really soon. We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, this episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you by Sleeper. Do you want the chance to win more money with less picks? Head to Sleeper, where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. Sleeper is now offering up to a 100 times payout for up to 8 pick contests. Choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less simply on your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. If you get your picks right, you could win big. Do you think Wilmer Flores is going to stay red hot and hit another home run? Maybe not against Ohtani, but maybe coming back home, maybe facing a lefty. You just simply hit more on homers. Do you think Ellie De La Cruz, the exciting phenom with the Reds, is going to head over to the Reds game and smash more on steals? Entries can be made in 30 seconds or less. It's that easy. They also have safe and fast withdrawals. Use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, here we go. We are going to discuss Marco Luciano reportedly coming back to the major leagues. This is a big deal for those excited about the Giants' future. This guy has the potential to be a big part of it. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow, breaking down the Giants versus Shohei Ohtani. Last chance to impress him. I thought they did a good job of probably impressing the Angels in Game 1. Yesterday was impressive that they fought their way back after falling behind big early. They did scratch and claw and make it a game out of it, but they also had long stretches where the offense was stagnant again. And so hopefully they can put some pressure on Ohtani and show him that they're a team that can fight against good pitching like he is. He's good pitching and good hitting, amazingly. Giants play the Angels and face Ohtani tonight at 6:38 Pacific, and you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search Giants. So, A.J. Pollock didn't have an at-bat despite being in the starting lineup because he was pulled from the game with left side discomfort, soreness, discomfort. And we don't know the diagnosis, and he was a little bit kind of close to the vest with talking about it after the game. So what's interesting is that he comes out of the game, and then Marco Luciano gets pulled from the game, the AAA game. And then there was a report this morning that said he is it's from somebody, not one of the main Giants reporters, saying that Luciano is in fact going to be called up by the Giants. So I would imagine that that's true. The guy seems legit. I don't really know who that reporter is, but a number of reputable reporters follow him. And so I imagine that that's correct. And we'll see Luciano. So it's an interesting 1-for-1 swap. If you're taking out Pollock, an outfielder, and putting on Luciano. It's also interesting because they're currently, facing Shohei Ohtani, a right-handed pitcher. And so the 1-for-1, like in the outfield, you could have Jock Peterson, you could have Luis Matos, you could have Blake Sable. And so this could be more just like to strengthen the bench. And when the Angels go to a left-handed reliever, they use Luciano, because in the infield right now, right, you've got J.D. Davis not going anywhere. Brandon Crawford, I would imagine, not going anywhere, although he was also lifted for a pinch hitter, but I think it was more of like a platoon matchup late in the game thing. But Kapler did say he was kind of dealing with a knee thing a little bit before the game yesterday. And so maybe, just maybe, there's like a Brandon Crawford IL, but I doubt it. It does seem more likely that it's a AJ Pollock thing. But it is interesting. It is interesting to sub out an outfielder like Pollock and then bring in an infielder like Luciano. It might just have more to do with having that bat on the bench. But again, facing a righty tonight and then having an off day tomorrow. So we'll see. That'll be something we'll get into tomorrow. But I also want to mention someone who is an outfielder. And this is why, like, if this guy was on the 40-man, I think we might see him maybe instead, or at least we'd see him soon, and we might see him soon anyway. And this guy's name is Wade Meckler. He's just shot through the Giants system this year. He started the year in high A. He then went to double A, and now he's in triple A. And at every single level, he's just been amazing offensively. Strikeout rates are really low. Hits are really high. He's a guy who's just hitting for a lot of average. He's also walking a lot, so his on-base percentages are crazy high. Not a ton of power. He did hit his first AAA homer yesterday, but the Steamer projection system has Wade Meckler hitting in the major leagues 278, which is really high by current modern standards, where the league average batting average is like 240 something, which we've got to keep in mind when talking about batting average is what is normal these days. But anyway, 278 is really high by normal standards. 351 on base, really high. And 407 slugging. It's not very high, but those other numbers are so good that it comes out to a 110 weighted runs created plus projection by the Steamer projection system for Wade Meckler. Only a 20% strikeout rate projection and a walk rate of 10%. So those are all across the board, except maybe the power numbers, above average projections. And that is unusual for a young player who's never played in the majors to come in with projection systems saying they're an above average hitter. And so based on the minor league numbers and based on this projection, I just see this guy playing in the major leagues for sure in 2023 if he can stay healthy. They have a need for offense right now, so I'd like to see the sooner the better you can get this guy's bat into the lineup because they need help. And yeah, I just wanted to mention he hit his first AAA homer, and they just had an injury to an outfielder, so I don't know. At some point, I'd like to see Wade Meckler, and I hope it's soon. And by the way, Farhan Zaidi on the Giants Talk podcast with Alex Pavlovich recently said about Meckler, he definitely thinks he's in play for this season, and it could be very soon. It seemed like a total hint, and that was about a week ago or so. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. That is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, Giants versus Ohtani, hopefully picking up a series win. This is a big game going into an off day, and then having a tough homestand with the Rangers and Rays coming into town, and then going to Atlanta. So big game tonight. Big game. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thanks in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Today, you are now Locked On Giants.